Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Trans Experience. Thanks for coming. My name's Michael Brown. I am the Managing Director of MKTG. We are a Dentsu agency network brand specialising in experiential and sponsorship marketing. I'm also an ally for And Proud, which is a steering committee set up by the people from our LGBTQ community who exist to promote inclusivity across the Dentsu Aegis network, which is a population of some 4,000 people in the UK and Ireland and over 40,000 globally. Today is International Transgender Day of Visibility, a day set up in 2009, so not too long ago, to celebrate the contributions of trans people to society and also to shine a spotlight on the discrimination faced by trans people on a daily basis. That's what we're marking this day with, is our webinar, The Trans Experience, What's It Like by People Who Know. Now, we've got a fabulous lineup of speakers. Before I introduce them, I'd like to prompt everybody who's logged in to use the Q&A function, which exists. I think it should be at the top right of your screens. It's a messaging function at the end of the panel session, which should be about 35, 40 minutes from now. We'll pick out a few of those, the most salient questions, and I'll ask the most relevant panelists to answer them. So with no further ado, if I could introduce the panelists, and I'll get them to say, if you could, your name, your role, your organisation, a little bit about yourself, and also to add your pronouns. If I could start with you, Louis.
Yeah, thanks very much, Michael. Hi, everybody. My name's Louis Asquith. My pronouns are they and them, and I'm the Legal and Policy Manager at Mermaids. Mermaids is a charity that supports transgender and gender variant children, young people, and their families.
Thank you. And over to you, Matt, the same thing.
Hi, my name is Matthew Moore. I'm Corporate Fundraising Manager at Mermaids. My pronouns are he and him. I'm really excited to be part of today. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally to Mark Hrunicus, MBE.
Hello, Michael. Hi, Louis, Matt. Hello. Thank you for inviting me. Mark Hrunicus. I'm a gay man, and I am the co-founder of a creative agency called Wax On. And I'm also chair of Outvertising, which is advertising's LGBTQ plus advocacy group. And I'm sure we'll talk more about exactly what we do and how we do it as we go on.
I'm sure we will. Thank you, Mark. So Louis, I'm going to launch straight in. I'm going to pick on you, if you don't mind. So when it comes to trans inclusivity in the workplace, while there's still much to do, it seems some progress has been made. A potential barrier, particularly for people like me outside of the LGBTQ plus community, is, I guess, the conveyor belt of new vocabulary, terminology to adopt. So Louis, I was hoping as someone from inside the trans community, if you could give us a quick trans 101, as it were. So what are the main terms to know? How do we keep on top of the language going forward, etc.?
Absolutely, I'll do my very best. I can completely appreciate that there is a lot of new language around constantly, and I remember the first time that I heard the term non-binary, for example, and obviously that had a very direct impact on me, and has allowed me ultimately to live my life fully as myself. But certainly, you know, if you're somebody living outside of the LGBTQI acronym, language can be very intimidating, and that's okay. I think the main thing to understand is that a lot of people don't know what certain terms mean, but there's a lot of information out there as well. There's a lot of people willing to teach and provide as much information or as little information as you need at any point. We're all human, we're all learning. Matt and I are very lucky because we get to work with young people who, you know, tell us all the cool words all the time. So that's fantastic. But certainly, you know, different offices provide different levels of information and different opportunities to have this kind of dialogue. So this is why these kind of events are so important, because it offers that information hopefully to be provided clearly. That being said, I can't give you every single word and every single definition today, but I thought it might be helpful to run through a few words that I wouldn't be surprised if many of participants today had heard of at some point and may have thought, oh, what does that mean? So we'll start with the term transgender, which is often used in a shorter form, trans. They mean the same thing, and it's an adjective. So trans or transgender simply means that somebody's gender identity is incongruent with the sex/gender they were assigned at birth. So, for example, I was, and I'm comfortable in saying this, I was assigned female at birth, but my gender identity is not that of a female or a woman, so I fall within the transgender umbrella. Cisgender is another term that's being seen more and more and more, and cisgender can be shortened to cis. And cis again is an adjective, and it is used to describe, can be used to describe people whose gender identity is congruent with that which they were assigned at birth. So if you were assigned male at birth and you identify as a man, you are cisgender. Some people like to use the adjectives trans, cis, transgender, cisgender, and some people don't. It's not obligatory to use, but they are there as descriptive words should somebody want to use them as well, and they're not inherently offensive. Non-binary is a term that is being seen more and more. I'm a non-binary person, and it is ultimately an umbrella term. Having a non-binary experience is quite simply somebody experiencing gender in a way that doesn't exclusively fit into being a man or a woman. Now, what that looks like is subjective. My experience as a non-binary person may not be the same as a non-binary person next to me. My personal experience of it is that I can fluctuate between being a man, being a woman, some days not feeling like either. It's, you know, understandably quite complicated to try and articulate. But the main thing that people need to remember is that it's about not fitting into that exclusive binary, and that non-binary people are valid. Gender identity is a term that's often used, and that's an innate sense of one's gender, how you go through life and that inner feeling, what that gender identity is. And gender diversity is a term that's used to try and encapsulate the wonderful spectrum of genders that exists in the world today. And Michael, you referred to pronouns earlier, so I'll finish with pronouns. Pronouns are essentially the way we describe ourselves in the third person. We're all accustomed to he, him, she and her. But we also are starting to see the emergence of pronouns that you may not be used to using singularly, such as they and them, which are often used for people who are gender neutral, non-binary or gender variant in some way. And the pronoun is used, if it's self-determined, is often used to express how somebody wants to be perceived. So it's incredibly important to respect and to listen. And if you, I tell from personal experience, when you tell somebody your pronouns and have the opportunity to tell someone your pronouns, if that is used, the affirmation that brings is not a small thing. So I would encourage people to ask people's pronouns. That's not an offensive thing to do. It's something we're seeing more and more and more, certainly within business. And us at Mermaids, we always try and encourage meetings to start not only with names but with pronouns as well. And yeah, you asked about how to keep informed and keep on top of language. You know, I've rushed through a few main terms there, but that certainly is the tip of the iceberg. And my advice would be, there's a lot of information out there, so podcasts, websites. The Mermaids website, for example, the Stonewall website is useful. Giles' website is incredibly useful. There's lots of different books out there that can be accessed, and people, and starting a dialogue. The main thing to remember is that if you go into a conversation with respect and a willingness to learn, that will be understood quite quickly.
I see. I unmuted myself there. Thank you, Louis. I'm going to keep with you, if I may. Now that we're all a little more knowledgeable, could you also speak a little to your lived experience, particularly in context of the increased media attention on your community? So what is it actually like to grow up trans?
Yeah, thank you. It's a really important question. I mean, when I reflect on this, I look back 25 years ago, which is when Mermaids was established, and that was around the time that I was tiptoeing to my brother's drawer, trying to steal, innocently I suppose, as innocent as it can be, steal some of his clothes to make me feel more like me. The language we had back then wasn't as established as we have now, and I grew up in a very loving home, but one that didn't understand quite exactly what I was going through. And looking back, it is clear looking back that I was a gender variant child. I would have benefited very much so from having support around me who understood that may have been what I was going through, to provide me with a more authentic childhood, if you like. And that's not to debase what I had, because I had a very loving childhood, but certainly I do look back and think it could have been more authentic within, in relation to my gender identity. And when I compare my childhood to that which we see at Mermaids, we still see sad stories. We still see happy stories. One theme that runs throughout every household is whether a young person is supported or not, and you can really see the impact on a young person if they don't have some form of support around them, whether that be in the home or whether that be at school or in wider society. We're not there yet in terms of equality and understanding around trans and gender variant young people specifically. There seems to be a dialogue around young people specifically, and a questioning around whether trans young people really know who they are. And we very much appreciate and respect the dialogue around this experience and people wanting to understand and do the best for children generally. But what we see and have seen for the 25 years of Mermaid's lifespan is that support, understanding, listening and caring for these young people is absolutely crucial. I work in the legal department at Mermaids, so we provide support and guidance, legal support and guidance. And I unfortunately still hear of situations and scenarios that are quite frankly heartbreaking. You've got young people who are at school and are not permitted to use the facilities that make them feel comfortable, and it results in the likes of young children wetting themselves at school because they can't access the facilities that they need to use. And this is the reality still. We have supportive households, we have supportive schools, we have supportive hospitals, supportive GPs, but we also have unsupportive households, unsupportive hospitals, unsupportive GPs, etc. And that is an unfortunate reality, but one that we need to accept is still happening and do our best to try and change. And that's where allyship comes in, and that's why allyship is so important, and events like this today are so important, because we look at statistics and we know that the majority of society is cisgender. So remembering that cis means that when somebody's gender identity is congruent with that which they were assigned. So the majority of society is cisgender, and we need the majority of society to understand and respect that trans people and trans children do exist, and that they are also worthy of respect and dignity in everyday life. So yes, we have seen a lot of positive change, and I hope that we continue to still see that. The media has been difficult over the past few years, but we are seeing sporadic positive news stories also, and we hope that positive change will continue to happen. But the tip of the fulcrum really going forward will be more people coming forward and showing respect and holding out their hand as an ally.
Thank you, Louis, for your testament. Inspirational stuff. So I'm going to bring Matt into the conversation at this point then. So Matt, Louis' story is, as Louis pointed out, is the reason why Mermaids exists. It's unbelievable to me that it's 25 years old. That's an amazing statistic, and maybe it's potentially, for the people who are viewing it, they probably don't quite know so much about mermaids, let alone know that it's been in existence for 25 years. So could you, before we go much further, just bring Mermaids to life a little? What's its mission? Why does it exist? Why it's important?
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, I also wasn't aware that Mermaids was 25 years old when I was applying for this job. And I think that says a lot about the tip in the narrative and the raise and visibility, as this day is all about, of trans people, especially in the UK and also abroad. So yeah, Mermaids is one of 2 nationwide charities supporting transgender young people and their families specifically. And our 3 pillars or 3 values are to embrace, empower, and educate. So we embrace everyone who comes to us. We believe they are valid. We empower them to get the help they may need and seek out that help. And we educate as well. So we provide the information and resources that those who come to us, whether they're a young person, whether they're a parent, or they could be a professional who is supporting a trans young person. So they might be a teacher or in the healthcare system. But we support them, and that is quite clear over. We do not advise, so we support them with the information that they need, but we see that any journey as a trans person or a possible trans person or just someone exploring their gender is equally valid. So we're here to support them on that journey. It might be one phone call, it might be them joining our community for a number of years, but whatever stage they're at, we are there to support them. So 25 years ago, we started as a group of parents at the Tavistock and Portman, which is an NHS foundation, and at the time was the only one supporting gender variant youth. And these parents were brought together by their children's commonality, which was they were trans or gender diverse. And as you can imagine, in the 90s, there was so little information out there. Perceptions of trans people were very, very different to what they were today. And they saw a need there. So they got together, as we say, around the kitchen table and founded Mermaids. And I'm sure a question that would come later, but I'll address it now, is why Mermaids? Very simply, all their kids were obsessed with them. And I think if you do a bit of thinking, you can probably see why mermaids are quite appealing. We could talk about that more, but I'll leave that for now. But that's where the name came from. And our current CEO, Susie, as well, she started out as a service user. So her daughter, Jackie, around the age of 3, told her mum that God had made a mistake and that she was actually a little girl. She kind of fought this for a few years and but wanted to accept her child, and found Mermaids and was a service user back in the late 90s. From there, she became a trustee and then chair. And then beginning in 2016, she came on as the first member of staff and CEO. And over the last 10 years, we've seen such a massive increase in demand. And it was because of that increase in demand, there was a need to formalize the charity. So that's why there's been a bit of an explosion in awareness for us, but also why our level of service has had to increase so drastically as well, because a lot of younger people are coming out a lot earlier. As Louis mentioned, trans identities are more accepted, and it's giving a lot more people, younger people, the confidence to come out younger. So that need has steeply increased. So Susie was monitoring calls in about 2014 and realized that we were having a huge amount of drop-off. So basically we said, we've got to do this properly, we've got to go home. And yeah, in the last 4 years, we've gone from a very small team and we're now about 20 staff. In terms of the services that we offer, the helpline is still the heartbeat of the charity. So we have a helpline available 9 a.m. till 9 p.m. Monday to Friday. We also have an information email support service. We also offer web chat online, which is really popular amongst our younger service users. So you can go on our website and that's open the same time as our helpline. And actually that increase in hours was a direct result of the Starbucks campaign that we'll be talking about a bit later. We also have online forums, which has about 1,700 parents on our parents forum and over 800 young people on our young people's forum. So that's for peer-to-peer support, discussion, finding a sense of community, because a lot of our young people might not know anyone else who is trans or gender variant, as well as parents who can support each other through this journey. We offer in-person support as well. So we run local groups across the country. Unfortunately, they're on hold at the moment, but we have about 15 at the moment, but we're looking to grow that to about 45 in the next 5 years. So anyone in the UK can find a place where they can have in-person support and discuss this. There's only so far you can go across a screen or a phone. We also offer residential weekends. So this is for whole families to get together. From Friday through to Sunday, we run workshops and activities for young people. And I've attended one of these, and you just see the transformation of these young people who have probably been quite isolated for a length of time. They might be being bullied at school, and they can just be themselves for a whole weekend, meet people like them, and really flourish. We have legal support, as Louise mentioned. So Louise handling upwards of correct me if I'm wrong, but I think 200 cases per year at the moment. We have a policy officer who's working directly with government equalities officers, and we also have a training team and an events team to run all those events. And our training team works mainly with public sector organisations, so fostering agencies, schools, healthcare, etc. So yeah, an array of services, and yeah, please check out our website if you're interested in learning more.
Thank you, Matt. Right, well, to land it, you teed me up perfectly, actually, Matt. I guess to land this conversation in the world of our audience, so that of media and advertising, I'm going to ask Matt to speak a little later about the partnership, more about the partnership between Mermaids and Starbucks, how it came about, particularly the now famous "What's Your Name" ad, which ran earlier this year, so not too long ago. But before we do that, I'm going to bring in Mark Runnicus, MBE, into the conversation. Mark, could you start by providing a few specifics about the organisation of which you are chair, Outvertising?
Yes, thanks, Michael. And I'm so pleased that we're here talking about trans awareness. And Outvertising, if you like, is there to represent the entire, I'm going to use the word queer. That's a word that, talking of vocabulary, I've certainly reclaimed, because it was a word that was thrown at me across the playground when I was a kid as an insult. So I'm proud to reclaim that and define myself as a queer man. And I use that to refer to all of my friends and my straight allies as well. And that's what we're here for, the entire LGBTQ+ community. And the sobering thought is that when we started back in 2016, we were slightly different then. There was no LGBTQ+ network in our advertising world at all, as far as we know. And, you know, I'm sure Matt and Louis will tell you that in the world of law and accounting and other places, LGBTQ+ networks have been around for a long time. I mean, the fact that Mermaid has been around for 25 years is fantastic, but it's dreadful that in our advertising world there was nothing like Outvertising. So we set about creating what was then a network, and it changed over time, and it's now there to do something which is very clear, that we're all volunteers. We all have a day job in advertising or in an agency or working in a marketing environment. So we all do it in our spare time, but we all believe passionately that we are privileged to have the jobs that we have as communicators. And what we all believe is that we should use that privilege in order to try and make society a better place. And the authentic way that we can do that is a gay man, as I am, or as a lesbian, or whatever we are, is to use advertising in a positive way. And that's all about inclusion. And what we do is we work with the brands in society, we encourage them, we advocate that they should have greater LGBTQ plus inclusivity. Because if it's not obvious, that to me is all about role models. There's a phrase that I'm sure we all use in this world is, if you can see it, you can be it. And that's what's really important. And we recognize that advertising is part of the fabric of our society. And we have a moral responsibility at the very least to make sure that advertising reflects the society of which we are part. And that's really in a nutshell what we do. But obviously we also try to surface role models inside our own organizations. And we do that by providing as much free support and resources. One of the great things we do, I think one of the guys who's watching today is one of our trainers, and he will train people to be the role models that you want to be. And that includes our straight allies too. Louis already mentioned allyship, really important part of it. So externally, working with a brand to surface LGBTQ lifestyles in the advertising, and internally inside organizations to make us the role models that we can be.
Perfect. Thank you, Mark. You sort of took on quite a lot of the questions I had there in short form, Mark. I want to think just a little bit more depth, I suppose, in some of these areas. So you lightly covered why is it important for advertising to embrace LGBTQ plus lifestyles. You mentioned early on that we haven't come too far when it comes to the advertising sector. So could you give a bit more detail on how far have we come, what do we need to do? But I think more pertinent for anyone who's looking after a client account, for instance, how easy is it to build the business case for LGBTQ plus inclusive advertising? I think that will be the one that most people viewing here would be interested in.
Well, let's talk about the business case, because I think we often overlook that. Certainly, as I said, a lot of people believe that it's just absolutely right that I should be in a TV ad, that Louis should be in a TV ad, and yet we know for so long we have been sorely ignored. And the beautiful story that Matt and Louis will tell you about mermaids and Starbucks came about because of a Channel 4 competition that gave £1 million of media to the cause, which in this case is mermaids. And to launch their competition, Channel 4 did some research. They looked at the UK's major advertisers, and they saw that only 3% of ads actually represented the LGBTQ plus community. So we still have a long way to go, but the mere fact that there is a fantastic mermaids campaign on TV shows that we have actually moved forward. But let me turn to the business case, because we often forget that. And it's great when somebody does start a campaign to get their particular organization to be more LGBTQ plus inclusive. But often there's a CEO who say, I agree, but at the end of the day, we have to sell stuff. So will this also sell stuff? And there's a great resource that I can recommend. It's available on the advertising website, which is advertising.org. And it's a guide, it's a free guide to producing LGBTQ plus inclusive advertising. There's a whole host of case histories. I'm just going to pick two out very quickly, because they're the ones that have really clear ROI, which is what we're talking about. And they were campaigns a year or so ago. And by the way, I'm sorry, they do take a while for the results to come through. So I think both of these campaigns are about 18 months old. There was one for Kellogg's, and Kellogg's they recognized that they were becoming a bit of a tired brand, and working with their agency Leo Burnett, they launched a campaign, and it was very LGBTQ plus inclusive. You'll be able to look at the campaign, and they noticed that because of the campaign, they actually sold more cornflakes. In actual fact, compared to the previous year's campaign, their sales were up by 5.8%. But what's really interesting, and this is an important point that I often make, is that when they look closely at the content, it was the LGBTQ plus content that actually drove the greatest engagement, 20% higher engagement than the rest of the generic content. And that's an important factor that anybody who is in a brand or as a client should bear in mind, that often LGBTQ plus engagement is so emotional and it creates that deeper engagement that's really, really important. The second case history, very quickly, is McCain's, and they were looking at lifestyles. They wanted to prove that McCain's was a particularly pertinent lifestyle brand, and we'll use the A word a lot. They chose an authentic lesbian couple, Kimberly and Molly, to be in their ad. And I don't have the sales statistics, but their brand tracking showed that as a result of that particular ad, the McCain's brand favorability really soared, intention to purchase really went up, and so really positive results from LGBTQ plus inclusive. Just 2 examples there, there's more on the website.
Fabulous, convincing cases, all of them. So on hearing that then, Matt, we're building up this Starbucks ad, aren't we? We will show it, I promise, at the end of the webinar. I wonder if you could speak a little more on that then, Matt. How did it come about? Mark's already mentioned the Channel 4 competition, but I wonder also if in the wake of that, go back to Mark's business case argument, has that been built for Starbucks in your opinion? Was it well received? Will they do it again? I guess would be a marker of that. And might others be inspired as a result of what's gone before with Starbucks?
Thank you. So I'll start at the beginning. So we were approached by Starbucks creative agency Iris back in September, and they'd already gone through the first stage of the pitch process, but they were down to the last 7 or 8 before they went to the final judges, and it was a fairly quick phone call, just saying, here's the idea. Would you? We want to go a bit further than. Basically, wanting to give back in an authentic way, but also to have a partner that could keep them on track and ensure that the campaign landed effectively, which I think we can wholeheartedly agree that it did. And I'll be quite honest. The idea that you see in the What's Your Name campaign was pretty much there from day one, and it just goes to show that the level of effort that they put into the idea itself, but also the research and the insight that drove that. And I think you'll look to a lot of other LGBT or LGBT focused campaigns. They're usually around Pride season. They're usually with a rainbow, and it's usually, LGBT people like to have fun, and that's about it. And there's no real depth to it, and that's when a lot of brands like to jump on board. So I was quite refreshed to hear that they were doing something at a different time of the year to start off with. But yeah, I think if the idea had not been there, or not in a way that I think that we could have driven it forward in a meaningful way, we would probably not have agreed to be in principle from that point. But I was confident, and so was the rest of the team, that we wanted to be a part of this because of like that true insight that they found. And in terms of how Mermaids got involved, I think it was a fan of ours at Iris that had heard of Mermaids and suggested it. So thank you to that person. I'm not sure their name. But yeah, it just goes to show that the awareness of the charity has risen so much as well, and that we can reach those people. So yeah, in terms of how we worked with them, we were there from kind of storyboarding. We were on set during filming. We were in touch with all the talent to ensure that we could support them if they needed it. But it went a lot deeper than that as well. So we helped Starbucks on their internal gender identity and expression policy. And we ran a series of sessions in their support center for different groups of staff, all the way up to leadership as well. So we had a session with the leadership team and our CEO, but we also spoke to the entire support center as well. And I think the kind of the watershed moment for me was was when their president, Martin Brock, spoke at the end of when we presented to the entire support center. And there was a small quiver in his voice about talking about how proud he was to be part of this campaign. And it was that moment where I thought, oh, this is going to be really big. So beyond the campaign as well, so what was massive for us and what was really incredible was that we were in most Starbucks stores for the duration of the campaign. through the Mermaid Cookie. So this was their idea to come up with a product that they could use to give back to mermaids and raise funds for us. So from the campaign, we are receiving £100,000, which is going directly to our helpline to ensure that that can be, that'll be funded for the next year or so. But just that brand awareness and being in store and having our brand up there has been incredibly validating for a lot of our service users. I heard one story which was from a parent that had come to us, and the level of impact that it had on their child was astounding in terms of they had seen that there was a product for them, but it had also kind of changed their outlook on life and their identity. And yeah, tears were shed. But even just that one story, I think, made it all worth it. And it goes beyond kind of it being advertising. It is a social purpose, and I think that's a lesson for other brands is what is the real impact for a person who sees this who is part of the community, rather than just a piecemeal tokenistic message. And then there is a legacy piece to this as well. Given the current social outlook, it won't be implemented as soon as we'd have liked, but Starbucks is supporting mermaids further than this campaign. So we will be running those local groups that I mentioned in some manner or form across the UK, and Starbucks will be hosting those for us. And we're just kind of looking at how that looks, but it might be a social gathering, but it also might be our core group meetings as well. And yeah, definitely, I think the business case was there, and the level of attention to detail that all parties involved, so Starbucks, Iris, Edelman, their PR agency, the level of detail that was taken throughout the entire campaign, I think is the main reason it landed so well. I'll leave it there because I'm sure there'll be questions, but yeah, that's how it came about.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, well, I'm going to open this up to the panel, and then after that we'll deal with some of the questions. In no particular order, but I might pick on you again, Louis, if you don't mind. So what are the main barriers? So seeing that there is definitely a legitimate business case, what are the main barriers then to brands running LGBTQ+ content? And then do you each have any tips, watch outs, particularly for creative and media agencies who are servicing brands with ideas for and embarking on inclusive advertising of this nature? Louis?
Yeah, I think the main barrier that comes to my mind, it hints at what Matt was saying earlier, which is corporates going forward with an idea without reaching out and speaking to those directly affected, those living the actual life of that whatever demographic of the population you are trying to target, without actually reaching out to that demographic and asking, how does this feel? What do you think to this idea? And I think perhaps that relates back to the language point at the beginning. How do I say it? What's the right question to ask? Am I going to offend somebody if I ask them this? Is this ad in itself offensive? And I hope that I can try and reassure those participating today that there are organisations, people, activists, allies out there who want to help, who want to hear your ideas, and try and encourage you and empower you to reach out and make sure what the language, the dialogue, the image you're trying to create is authentic. And it's that A word again, isn't it? But it's so crucial, because if it's not authentic, that will be seen quite quickly. And we're living in an age now where most people know somebody who falls within the LGBTQIA demographic. So it's when you deliver an ad, a campaign as a corporate, everybody you're reaching out to probably has some direct experience with an LGBT person. So it's incredibly important to get it right. And there are people who know how to get it right. So my piece of advice, nice and simply, would be to reach out to the likes of Mermaids, likes of Stonewall, likes of advertising, reach out and ask those questions, and be ready to learn, be ready to listen, and be ready to collaborate.
Wow. Thank you, Louis. And Mark, the same questions. Do you need a reminder of what they are?
In terms of watch outs and barriers, I think the biggest barrier that we hear about a lot is fear, and it's linked to what Louis was saying. There's no need to be fearful. And in the same way, often we kind of look on a brand that does something like this as being particularly brave. And I'm not taking anything away from the brands that are doing really courageous stuff. I'd encourage them to continue to be creatively brave anyway. I mean, that's what we do for a living. But the bravery, I think, is less so when you do as Louis suggests, and you start within. That's my version of what Louis was saying. Start within. And when we talk to a brand for the first time, well, the first question is, have you got your own LGBTQ network? Have you got an ERG, an employee resource group? And if you haven't, then start one, because the community will see straight through it if your intentions aren't authentic, if they're not particularly genuine. A couple of other things to think about. You don't have to go from zero to hero. Mermaids has done an amazing job to go from being not that well known to being on national television and having an amazing campaign. You don't have to go that far overnight. They were lucky, and they deserved the £1 million that they have. But you can, as a brand, start smaller, and as part of a bigger campaign, think of the other channels that you've got available to you in the integrated marketing mix. So you could do some LGBTQ stuff maybe online, or maybe face-to-face, or in CRM, all kinds of ways and places. So you don't have to go large with your first attempt. We also recommend, don't forget the LGBTQ plus media itself. That's a great way to start understanding how to communicate with and how to be part of our community. All of those little steps actually part of an authentic engagement with us and with our straight allies as well.
Thank you, Mark. And back to you now then, Matt. Same questions. What tips, watch outs? Where might we go wrong? What might we go right?
I think Mark and Louis have covered most of what I would say, but just to reiterate, like if you're sitting at a table or doing a brainstorm, and it's not just for LGBT people, it's for any minority or protected characteristic, think who should be at this table, who is not represented in this room, and they might not always be in your organization. Trans people are estimated to be 1 to 2% of the population, and they face barriers to employment as well. So as a sector, the advertising industry might not have a huge amount of trans representation, which again asks another question about recruitment and how we bring those people to the fore. But yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. I think authenticity is key, and another campaign that springs to mind was the one that P&G did, which was about a trans man's kind of first shave with his dad. And that's an experience that's going to happen. It's real. But again, you can still do the fun stuff. But I think another tip would be, it's not all about pride as well. So days like today, Trans Day Visibility, is there an authentic, again, not piecemeal way that brands can recognize days like today, bring in trans influencers and things like that. But yeah, I think always looking to see who else should be in the room or can be spoken to, and that reflects what Louis mentioned at the beginning.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, well, before we move on to any questions, Matt, there was because we're getting close to the end. I see we're a bit tight on time, and we do have to show that Starbucks ad as we talked about that a lot now. And I'm hoping that the people who have logged in, because we did give them some homework, some pre-prep, which was to watch the ad, but we'll hopefully see if the technology works. But before we get to the cues, there was something you wanted to mention as well about the festival coming this week, Matt. Do you want to, shall I say, give it a bit of a plug?
Thank you. Yeah, very quickly. So given the current situation with COVID-19, we are having to be quite innovative and think outside the box. Well, it's not outside the box. A lot of other organizations are doing virtual things like we're doing today. But as you can imagine, charities are in need of support more than ever. Our young people will probably be more isolated, and they might actually be facing quite tricky situations because they might be with unsupported parents, or not have access to friends who can appreciate them for their true identity. So this Saturday, we are doing an online festival called DigiFest. DigiFest 2020. It's the first of its kind, and we're hoping it will be the biggest LGBT plus online festival ever so far. We've got a really exciting lineup, which is being announced very slowly, but we've got some amazing LGBT influencers, some UK Drag Race royalty, and some really big household names joining us on the stream. So keep an eye on Mermaid's Twitter feed for those announcements. And yeah, tune in on Saturday. We'll be going live on Twitch, and we'll be having the links live before then. It'll be a lot of fun, but it's also a bit of a fundraiser as well, and it'll be interactive as well. So if anyone wants to tune in, I'm sure we've all got very clear diaries at the moment. So even if you can tune in for a couple of hours, please do. It's going to be huge. So thank you for giving me the space to talk about it here.
My pleasure. Yeah, I've definitely got a clear diary on Saturday. I'll look to join. Yeah, interesting you mentioned the whole COVID-19 thing. Just for the benefit of everybody who's tuned in today, this was originally meant to be a live event seminar, and we did, between the four of us here, we did talk about pulling it, and we thought, well, why let a virus make trans visibility invisible? So we decided to do this today's seminar. We've all got to grips with the technology, so apologies if there have been any glitches en route. I can see there is a couple of questions. I'll see if this comes up. Okay, it's from an anonymous attendee, this one. He says, thanks so much for hosting this talk. It's been incredibly inspiring. Given the current situation, are there any more online webinars or events we should look out for? Okay, well, there's the event that Matt's just spoken about. Anything else, team, Louis, Mark, anything on your radars that we could point our anonymous attendee to?
I've got one, and I'll get into trouble for mentioning this because it's an experiment, but we have a monthly face-to-face get-together, and guess what? It's not happening. So we're trying a virtual get-together tomorrow night, and everybody is welcome. I'll get into trouble because obviously for the first time we hope it doesn't fall over technically or anything. But if you go to the advertising website, which is advertising.org, and just click and go through to the page after the landing page, there's the Zoom link to join our virtual social tomorrow night. And just whilst I'm talking, if anybody does want to get involved, there's no formal membership of advertising. You just turn up and say you want to help out. And that's what happens, and we have hundreds of amazing people who are part of the network and a core team who actually get everything done. But one way to find out more about us, come to the virtual social tomorrow night.
Perfect. And someone has got in touch on the chat line to ask me to plug something. It's from A. Bunce Waters to all panelists and attendees. There is this afternoon, Mental Health in Isolation with Campbell. I'm going to have to, there's a whole load of web addresses. I'm going to have to circulate these to email, but yeah, I've got another question. It's a good one, this. I might pick on you for this one, Mark. It says, it's from Daniel Stubbs, and Daniel says, how can brands best navigate critical accusations of rainbow capitalism? Brands I work with have seen negative sentiment towards, e.g. pride campaigns they have run. How can we show consumers that we're working to represent the community and not just trying to profit from them? I think we've sort of touched on those themes, but if you wanted to take that one on, Mark, that'd be much appreciated.
So I'm going to say something that may be a bit unpopular, because I think sometimes the queer community is very tough on itself. And I don't always agree with immediately shouting about somebody who's pink washing or gay washing or whichever term you want to use. Because in some ways, I think that as long as a brand is well-intentioned, that we should celebrate that. And that's certainly the philosophy that we at Advertising do. We would never publicly decry a brand who has made a genuine effort to include us. Privately, you know, we might say, you could have done it slightly better, you could have done it slightly differently, for all the reasons that Louis and Matt and I have been talking about, probably because they didn't engage the community in the right way at the outset. But, you know, you hear those stories about on a Pride Day when a shop sticks a rainbow flag in the window, and is that kind of gay washing? If it means that a queer guy or girl or whatever they are in Tesco on that day feels a bit prouder, a bit more able to talk about who they are and be their authentic selves, and I think that is not a bad thing. But to specifically answer the question, to avoid all those accusations, then just do the things that we've said, which is start within. Perhaps don't start with sponsoring a pride parade. Start smaller. Start with a real grassroots, authentic engagement with the queer community and learn about it. And then as you take further steps going forward, I am confident that you won't get the accusations that we've talked about. But if you do still, and maybe Matt and Louis can talk about this, because I know there was a backlash to the Starbucks campaign, but you managed that very, very well. It's about don't turn back, continue, be confident, but have your social media ready if and when something like that actually happens.
Thank you, Mark. There's definitely a question for Louis here. Going back to your Trans 101, Louis, are there websites or apps to help understand how to use pronouns, terminology, etc.? Do you know of anything you can point to anybody anywhere?
I don't know any app specifically. There was an app a few months back, but that hasn't materialised, so I don't want to give that information in case it goes nowhere. But what I would say is that there's loads of information online. If you simply type in how to use pronouns, loads of information comes up. The key kind of messages I would say, because a lot of people are often worried about how to ask someone's pronouns. So in a meeting room, a corporate environment, in whatever way, offering your own pronouns is a really good way to start it. So, for example, if I'm in a room, and I have been in a meeting before where no one else is giving pronouns, I'm thinking, oh no, I'm going to be the first one to do this, you know. But actually, when you get to the swing of it, it's not daunting. So, hi, I'm Louis. My pronouns are they and them. You know, whatever else you need to say after that. It may be that only a few people do it after you, or it may be that you are the only one who's done it in that room, but you'll probably spark interest for those in the room at the time, which is a good thing. I think in relation to using pronouns that are less common, such as they and them, it's about practice. So if you have 10 minutes, you know, to go on a coffee with a colleague that you're comfortable with and say, right, can we go and practice they and them pronouns for 10 minutes, just to see if I can get into it. Because a lot of people haven't or not used to using they and them singularly consciously. I say that because we do actually use them in certain scenarios. But anyway, actually practicing with somebody that you feel comfortable with is a really easy, neat way to build up your confidence around that kind of vocabulary. So if somebody does say, hi, I'm Louis, my pronouns are they and them, you're not going to get that anxiety. As a caveat to all of that, however, if you do, you know, if I met some of you that are watching today and you had never used the pronouns they and them for somebody, if I said that and you said to me, okay, I've never used they and them for somebody knowingly before, I'm going to try my utmost hardest to get it right, but please forgive me if I make a mistake here and there. That's a really easy, respectful way just to say, I'm going to do my best, I respect you, and you know, what else can I ask anyone to do? But it is about practicing, it's about listening. But yeah, having a cup of tea with a colleague that you know you can trust and get on with is a good action point, I think, for anyone worried about taking that forward.
Thank you, Louis. That's brilliant answer. I'm going to move. There's another interesting question actually from Lee Maybe. I know Lee. He's the chair actually of the And Proud Steering Committee. I'm going to open this up to all three of you. Actually, I think it's a really good question. How can we represent trans identities in brand communications? And obviously, this is a common theme without accusations of tokenism. Could you give an example of who has done this well? I guess I think we've spoken about Starbucks, obviously. Mark, I'm sure you'd mentioned a couple of earlier. I just wanted to specifically focusing now on trans. Is there anything that springs to mind immediately?
Yeah, I'm gonna forget the exact ad, but there was a Nike campaign featuring an American heptathlete, I think, who is trans, and it was really raw. And yeah, I remember the first time I saw it, incredibly emotional. I don't know whether Matt and Louis know the one I'm talking about.
I think I do.
Yeah, so I mean, not tokenistic at all. It was amazing, really fantastic.
To go back to Starbucks, a lot of people are very aware of the hero piece of content, but they also launched 4 portraits of trans people and how they chose their names, and that's again giving kind of them the voice rather it being the brand. And it was all, and one of them was about trying their name in a Starbucks, and we found that a lot of our service users had actually tried their names in Starbucks as well. Another one I worked on when I worked at Stonewall was with Absolute Vodka, and they did a campaign it was around allyship, but they got an LGBT person to curate a number of influencers to just talk about allyship, and that was integrated into their comms, and they built a sort of web. It was called Drop of Love, by the way. And it was a bottle that had been made out of hateful protest signs, so it's kind of turning hate into love. It was a great concept. But that was giving the power to the LGBT community to create the comms around it and why this theme is important to them. And I think ultimately leaning on them rather than making assumptions or driving home a message that might not sit well is probably the best way forward.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
and what I would probably add to that, Michael, is just to say that every corporate has to start somewhere.
Yes.
And if you do go for it and do something, it may be that you know, others, a small minority of people might suggest you're being tokenistic, but if you continue to be an ally and do it, you know, throughout the year, as Matt referred to earlier, making sure the relationships that you generate aren't just a flash in the pan relationship, making sure that the campaigns that you do are one of many different initiatives that you do, then quite quickly that suggestion will dilute, and then you will be amongst the most fantastic community, and will be seen as, again, we're bringing in the A word, an authentic ally. But please know that the main thing to remember is, if you do you know, take something forward, bring out a new initiative, that the positive impact that will have is far greater than any negative, you know, tokenistic idea will be. It's absolutely worth doing, and the benefits will be felt not only within your corporation, but amongst wider society.
Lovely. Richard Miles does send us the what's called refers us to the Right Pronoun app, available at www.therightpronoun.com, and it's also downloadable from the App Store. So thanks for that, Richard. We've learned something there. Now I have got the questions are coming in endlessly now, and I think we're running out a bit of time. I notice it's getting to 1 o'clock, and we still haven't shown that Starbucks ad. But yeah, these questions are actually brilliant, and I wouldn't like to beg any more of the fabulous panelists' time. They're already given an hour and a couple more, and much more than that in rehearsal. It took us a while to get to this point. It's yeah, there's been a lot of work in getting it this slick. I'm going to finish here by thanking all of the panelists. I felt I've learned a lot on this journey as an ally. So thank you for that. And I've certainly increased my vocabulary, Louis, you'll be pleased to hear. And thanks for that. So I am going to, if the technology forbids, wave bye-bye to the panel and then share my screen to show the much talked about Starbucks ad. I hope it works seamlessly. And let's see if it does.
Gemma Miller?
Gemma Miller, please come to room 4.
Hello?
Hello, am I talking to Gemma?
Hey, Dad.
Hey! Carol, you remember my Gemma?
And what's your name?
It's James.
James?